Good evening, friends. How are you all? Hi, it's Charlotte here, and happy Friday evening to you. Firstly, hi, Carla. Firstly, let me apologise for the lighting. I've had a bit of a shocker with blown light bulbs and trying to make things work in the past, literally in the, hi Joyce, just in the past few minutes. So I'm a bit shadowy and a bit strange, and with just the salt lamp on, it was a bit like a boudoir, which wasn't the look I was going for. And with this main light on, I feel like I'm in a doctor's surgery. So I hope it's going to be okay. But it's so lovely to see so many of you joined already. And this is such an exciting topic this evening, and actually so exciting that for the past half an hour I've just been sitting in front of my phone whilst trying to sort out the lights and just thinking, this is really exciting, I could actually go live now. It's a good job that all the lights failed me, actually, because otherwise I would have started early. I was that excited. And also, usually I don't really write in many notes before I do a live, because I don't want to be distracted. I just put some bullet points to keep me remember. But I've written pages and pages of notes because there's so much to say about this topic. As Carla just said, what a juicy topic it really is. And you, Carla, thank you for all of your delicious questions that you put on my post yesterday or the day before. So, shall we start? Let's start. Why we don't make our children share and what we can do instead. So, what can we say to start with? What can I say to start with? To start with, I would just like to say that young children, young humans, all humans are innately good. Our children are innately good. And we can trust in their innate goodness. Young children are all kind. Young children are all loving. Young children are all generous by nature. That is how they are. And that was Dr. Montessori's belief as well. And so when we're talking about this subject of sharing, or actually anything that's difficult in terms of conflicts with our children or with our children between other children, it's a really good starting point to remember that our children are just perfect, whole and complete as they are. They are innately good, and our role as their parent is to trust in their innate goodness and to be their cheerleader. If we are labeling them and berating them for normal childlike behaviour, then who on earth can they turn to? So it's really worth us remembering that our children are perfect exactly as they are, and they have their own unique journey and trajectory, which I know I bang on about on every single session, but this theme keeps coming up. Hey, so yeah, that's the first point, actually, that our children are innately kind and generous and good, and so when they don't want to share, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything about their personality or their character or who they're going to turn out to be. Sharing in the sense where in the way that people demand young children to share, is completely inappropriate. And this is inappropriate because children's brains are not yet developed sufficiently to understand that one person looks at something, then another person looks at it, and what have you. They can't understand that concept. And what we are asking them to do is to, and it's absurd, so let's talk through a scenario, they're in the first 6 years of their life, they absorb everything with all 5 of their senses. They are interested in everything. They want to, when they're a baby, they want to mouth everything, they want to grab everything, they want to look at it, they want to touch everything, they want to feel everything, they want to smell everything, they want to taste everything. Okay. So they have this drive. This is an inner drive. This isn't a sort of sauntering around on a Sunday afternoon. This is an innate drive that they have to explore. So they have found something of interest in the playground, a red spade, for example, or a red car. Goodness, the cars. I know that Carla can echo my pain about red cars in the playground and what dramas that causes. So your child has found this red spade in the playground, and it is fascinating to them. They've picked it up, and then another little person comes over, and it's their spade, and they haven't taken too kindly to this other child picking up the spade, and then parent of child number 2 runs over and goes, "No, it's okay, you've got to share." And obviously the child who the spade belongs to is utterly beside themselves. The child who first took it is quite adamant that they're looking at it and they want to carry on looking at it, and the child who's come over is beside himself. And then we as parents will then make it worse, because then I would imagine then child number 1 parent's going to come over and say, "Oh, it's not yours, give it back." And then it's just this horrible mess. And the best way I can describe how ridiculous this scenario is that has been created by the unwittingly, let's be kind, unwittingly by the parents, the situation, it would be like 3 friends, and they are having coffee together, and one of them's reading a magazine. Okay, let's use this as an example. And one's reading a magazine, a second one comes up and says, or doesn't say anything actually, just takes the magazine out of the first one's hand. The first lady protests and says, "I was reading that, I haven't yet finished." And then the third lady says to the first one, "What are you talking about? You've got to share." She wants to look at it now. "You've got to share." And we would never ever do that as adults, would we, hey? We would never ever expect our friend to give something up that they haven't yet finished with. They would wait. That's what we do as adults. We would wait. We would respect that our friend or whoever, a stranger, doesn't matter whether it's a friend or a stranger, has not yet finished doing what they're doing, and they just say, "May I have a look when you finished with it?" And that goes for a magazine or someone's watch. You don't just rock up and take someone's watch off their wrist and then just say, "Oh, you've got to share," and then put it on your wrist and wander off, do you? I mean, it's just so strange that we expect children to do things that we do not do ourselves. So taking a step back from that, the scenario that we want to create as parents to support our children in this journey of learning how to be in the world. It's not even a journey of sharing, it's learning how to be in the world, it's learning how to collaborate, it's learning how to communicate with others. We want to do as we would do to a friend or a brother or a sister or a stranger. We want to teach our children, essentially the end goal is the skills to be able to wait and to be able to communicate. When you finished with that, may I have a turn, may I have a look, and that respect as well that goes with that. So that's what we're aiming to do, and this starts from really young children, and this is going to be really hard for young children, and some children are more impulsive than others. I don't mind sharing a story about my own son who, Carla's just come in. Okay, Carla has just asked a really good question. The child who found it, she's referring to the red spade for people who've just joined, can look at the spade and then give it back when he is done, or is he expected to give it back and ask permission before taking it? I think in the scenario that I described, or if you're in a situation where your child has already picked up something and you weren't there in the nick of time to sort of support them or whatever was going on, they've got it in their little paws and they don't want to let it go. I think when you've got to that stage, then there's no point trying to take 3 steps back and say, "Oh, you need to ask," and then give it back in. If they're young, they're not going to be able to do that. Possibly for a 4 or 5-year-old, they might be able to give it back and then ask permission in an acceptable, for want of a better word, way. But for a 1, 2, 3-year-old, no way. I don't think that's gonna happen. Your second point of your question, is he expected to ask permission before taking it? In an ideal scenario, an ideal world, if a child is playing with something and the other child wants to also go and engage and play with it, that would be a great that would be a great thing to be able to happen, to be able to work towards, that they're going to ask permission. But in the scenario that I was describing, it was a red spade sort of randomly on the grass, as it were. And Carla's come, so hopefully that answers your question, Carla. If the child's already got it, then don't try and wrestle it out of their hand. You've got to just support them through it, and then ideally ask permission before taking it, but that's not going to be possible in every scenario. If you're in a big sand pit in a playground with loads of different toys, it's not going to be possible. The key is just to be really close for support, actually, and then if we see that something's kind of going off track, then we can just be there and offer the words of encouragement as needed. So Carla said, and then how do you support the child whose spade has been taken? This is great. Yes, so going through in our scenario, the child whose spade has been taken, they need our support in that, what could we say? Oh, you hadn't finished working with that, had you? You hadn't finished playing with that. Now, let's say Harry. Now Harry's got in. Harry's working with it at the moment. I wonder what he's going to do with it. And this is where our opportunity to really coach our child, the child that's disappointed, the child that wants their spade back right now because it's theirs and because they're 1 or 2 or 3 years old and they cannot see anything other than the red spade. It's really, really important to note at this point that our children, when their possessions become like part of them, part of their identity. It's called a schema. It forms part of their identity, as it were. So honestly, the child whose spade has been taken away, it seems like the end of the world, because it is the end of the world in that moment. It's not the end of the world in the big scheme of things, but it is the end of the world in that moment. So reason isn't going to work. Empathy will work, and validation of their feelings will work. So the child whose spade it is, who wants it back right now, understandably, it is going over to the child who's now playing with it and just empathizing and say you really wanted it, and you might scream and cry. You might need to pull them onto your lap and just hold them and just reassure them and say, yeah, you hadn't finished. You didn't want Harry to play with it, did you? Acknowledge what they're feeling, validate what they're feeling, and support them. I wonder what he's going to do next. Oh look, he's digging a sandcastle. We like digging sandcastles on the beach, don't we? I wonder what he's going to do next. And it's almost like coaching your child, talking them through exactly what's happening, talking them through so that you're not distracting them because that's inauthentic. You're acknowledging and you're keeping their attention on what they want, but in a healthy way, so they don't have that panic, they don't have that sense of scarcity or lack. And by making them share, actually, and this is a separate point I was going to make later, but by making them share when they don't want to at a really young age, it can create this scarcity mentality that it makes it worse. It actually makes them want to hold on to stuff. And then when they're 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, when really this intensity around belongings has waned and they're in a different developmental stage anyway, that can really be emphasized and be held onto for too long if we don't chill out in this period actually of intensity and realize that it will pass. So I hope that answers your question, Carla. Hi Celine, I see you've just joined. Hi Aline, I see you've just joined. And hello Resha, I see you've just joined. Any more questions before we go on? Where did we got to? Oh, we got to how it is absurd to ask children to do things that we don't want to do ourselves, like just have something snatched from us and then everyone tell us that we should be expected to share. I've lost my thread a little bit. Yeah. And actually that leads into Carla's question. The two sides of what we're doing here is when going back to the red spade example, is that we are respecting both children here. So the child who's interested with the red spade and wants to work with it, we are respecting him because that's what he's chosen to do in that moment. And we are respecting the child who wants the spade back. We're just it's a really delicate balance. And of course in the playground it's an even more delicate balance because you're going to have two parents who possibly may have different parenting styles. And you're probably going to have, if you do have a scenario that then the other child is made to give back the thing that your child wants, then you can also coach your child and talk through saying, you know, he's not ready to give it back yet, is he? You know, you can see now he's upset, he's not ready. You're not trying to make your child feel guilty. You're just explaining to your child the kind of what's going on and the backstory, and now why the other child is so upset. So it just sort of helps, like a little bit of talking and supporting your child so they can see what the dynamic is there. Excuse me, I'm just going to have a drink of water. Carla, should we go for your question? Oh, hi Rasha. Thank you so much. I have a 6-year-old and 2.5 girls, so it's a struggle every day. Thanks for the amazing tips. Pleasure. And there's more to come as well, Rasha. Carla, should we go for your questions actually that you posted on my feed? So I remember one of them really stood out because, sorry, I need to now get it on my laptop. Oops. One of them, Carla, was about family members who perhaps don't understand what you're trying to do regarding sharing. So Carla's question was essentially, how do we explain to family members when we're following a different parenting style that they are, and when we're not making our children share? And for me, Carla, there's two points to this. One is, well, actually, there's two truths in this. One is that the family are either going to be open to your approach or they're not going to be. It can only be one of two. It can only be one of two things. So you can, if you are going to explain it, then just try and do it in a really, really light-hearted way. What has always worked for me is to say, oh, I know it's a bit weird, or I know it's a bit different, but what we're trying is We're not actually making him share. He's finding his own way with that. And just try and make it really, really light-hearted, because if you're saying it to grandparents or you're saying it to people of an older generation, they are automatically going to take it as, or they may automatically take it as an insult that you're doing something different to your upbringing. And I know that may be their stuff, and I know that's not your problem, but you want to work with people. Do you see what I mean? You want to be able to work with them. So it's kind of try and keep it really, really light-hearted. And I think that probably all of us who is listening, who have got more than one child, will perhaps agree that with our first child, we were pretty militant with how things were done. And then we got to subsequent children, we were able to see that we just relaxed. It's not about seeing anything. We just relaxed a bit more. And I know I'm a lot more relaxed with Harry's influences than I was with Olivia's, for sure. Harry is 3 and Olivia is coming up to 5.5. So I know that there's definitely been a shift in me and the way that I respond when people interact with my children in a way that I'm not comfortable with. So that's one side of it. And the second side of it is, I think, yeah, we've just got to let go. We can be really, really light-hearted, but we've just got to let go and trust that what we're doing is enough. Our children see the way that we do things all day, every single day. And then spending, even if it's a week, 2 weeks, a month over the summer with family, it's not the same as us being with them 24/7. They'll sense that there is a difference, and that is okay. And it's really important that they see a breadth of interactions. They see a different parenting styles, and they're going to see different emotions, and they're going to see different ways of approaching things. And I think that's okay. If we're really clear in our home life with our partner how we're addressing things, that's more important than actually wider family in my view. So I hope that answers your question. 1, keep it lighthearted, and 2, know that you are enough, and what you are doing in your home is enough of a foundation that our children will sense the authenticity behind it. And the other questions you asked, one was, how do you prepare our child for a play date when a friend is coming over to play, and selecting what toys they're going to use or work with together. And what I've always done is preparing them in advance, and this, like everything else, is a quick it's not a quick fix. It's definitely a work in progress. So we talk ahead, say, so Sarah's coming over to play. Sarah and Mia are coming over to play. What do you think they'd like to play with you when they come over? And then you can go through item by item. Hopefully you've only got a few things on your shelves, say 3-5 things on your shelves anyway, so it's not like a mountain of stuff. You've got a couple of things on your shelf, and you can go through piece by piece. And then they will say yes or no. Your child will say yes or no, and then you can really talk them through this. Are you comfortable for Sarah to play with this? Are you comfortable for Mia to touch this? And I mean, when they're really, really little, when they're about 2, what's quite comical about this scenario is that you'll end up clearing the whole shelf, because they will say no to everything. And that's okay as well, because as we know, children will play with anything, and even when there's nothing to play with, they're still going to play. So don't stress. It's very much just preparing them, because it's this, like with the scenario in the playground about honouring what each child is doing, this is about respecting our child and what their preferences are. Because the only way we learn respect, true respect, is by it being given to us. We can't, like, I guess there was an old-fashioned notion of respect for elders, and that respect should be, I need to get it right, is a given, you know, it's not earned. But actually with our children, what they really learn is from our role modelling, and if they see and they feel, they intrinsically know that we are respecting them, then that's something that they are going to internalise, and they're going to be able to do and move forward as they mature and as they grow and as they become adults. So this is very much preparing them in advance. This child's coming over, would you like to play with them? Yes. Or would you like to play with this? Yes or no. And it's fine. If they don't want to, that is absolutely fine. They can take everything off the shelf, or they can keep everything out, whatever they prefer. So I hope that answers your question about that. Hi Pascal, who's just joined, and hi Saskia, who's just joined. What do we want to say next on? Oh, and Carlos added, but when we agreed to keep all the toys out for everyone to use, then he changes his mind when they come. Then what? Now that's a fun one, isn't it? That really makes our head spin, and that's happened to me as well. I think if that happens, and then obviously there's a situation when he's come, I mean, it depends where he is. If this is the first or second time that this has happened, then he maybe isn't quite yet used to this process, you know. He isn't quite used to this process, so it's just like, okay, let's put these away now. And the thing is that if the child coming over for a play date, you know, presumably the people that are coming into your home are people that are going to understand anyway. Do you know what I mean? I think it's very much just feeling your way when that type of thing happens. It's, if he really doesn't want to, once they get there, then that's okay. You can put it away, and you can suggest something else. That might be a need to suggest something else at that time, because if he's little, if this is a 1 or a 2 or a 3-year-old, this is can escalate into a situation, and then it's not about the toys, it's about something else, and they probably have got a build-up of tension about something else, you know. So it's really about just sensing in that moment what it's really about. If maybe they don't fully understand, maybe it's not about that, and maybe actually they're not feeling this play date today. Or maybe they genuinely have changed their mind, and that's okay. But scenarios like that will happen, and it's very much, I think, observing and feeling away, trying to understand what's going on in that moment, and really hoping that the other parent is understanding of what's going on, and just talking through. And I know that you do that anyway, and you can say to the other child, he's not ready, he's changed his mind, so we're going to put this away now. And also our children are really resilient. it's horrible to see them upset, and it's horrible when it feels like and it looks like the end of the world when they can't have what they want in that moment. And it's really hard for us as parents to see that, but they are going to be okay with our loving support. And these type of interactions that are difficult, they build our resilience and our understanding from observing our children, and they build our children's resilience as well, actually. So these are really, really helpful interactions, even though they feel really challenging at the time. Please do jump in with questions if anyone else has any. What I was going to say for my next point was, and I think I may have actually just covered that, is it's going to take time. It's going to take a lot of practice for this to happen, where either you're preparing them in advance for a child coming and they're choosing their toys, or you're in a scenario where they can wait, where there's the red spade in the playground and your child really, really wants it, and you're going to sit them on your lap and you're going to talk them through, and they're going to be able to sit with you and wait until the other child is ready, the other child is finished with it. This all takes time. This is a process. And I mean, Olivia's almost 5.5, and she can do this now, but she's 5.5, you know, that's a long time. That's the whole of her life thus far, practicing doing this, practicing deferring her wishes. And because she was an only child, the first child, the eldest child for 2.5 years, she never had to share anything. So it's even more challenging, you know, for her. Whereas Harry, just before he turned 2, he had a very intense period of being the toy taker. He was the toy taker in the room. And then he gave everyone a bite when they weren't happy with him taking their toys as well, which was super stressful at the time. But it passed after a couple of months, thank goodness. But it was really stressful at the time. But now Harry is a 3-year-old. It's crazy how patient he is, how long he will wait, how communicative he is when he really wants to play with something, and he'll tell the child, and he has far greater skills as a 3-year-old than Olivia had, probably because he's a second sibling. But it's just that practice. It's that practice every day, and these lovely little interactions. And it really depends on the childcare setting they're in. If they're going to nursery, you know, is this a setting that supports that by respecting each child's work, or is this at a setting that makes children stop what they're doing and then give their toys to someone else? So that's something really good to question if we're looking for a childcare setting, we're looking for a nursery, we're looking for an early learning centre. Those are one of the questions we can ask the principal when we're going round, and the teachers when we're going round. You know, how do you deal with this? How do you deal with sharing? What's your view on this? Because some methods of education, like RIE, Magda Gerber's approach, and of course the Montessori method, I'm a Montessori teacher, they really focus on respect of the child, of the child's work in that moment, and other people can't come and take it. And that's what really supports children in respect of others. But not every educational approach follows that same path. So it's really good as parents for us to just find out what's going on in the classroom, and to make sure that that's a reflection of what's going on and the values we want in our home as well. Sorry, that was a bit of a digression. But yeah, all of our children's feelings are valid, and it's okay for them to be really, really cross that they can't have what they want. It's okay. They are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years old. It's okay, and it's okay for them to release that, and it's okay for them to show that frustration, and it's okay for them to say, no, I don't want that child to touch my toy or play with my toy. It's okay. And it feels like, in our heart we're like, we're really embarrassed, or our ego gets the better of us and we want to make our child share, or whatever it is. But that's all our stuff. These are little people, and they need our patience, and they need practice, and they need our time to actually get to know how to be in this world. So their feelings are fine, or just allow whatever is happening, just allow and just validate them, and see what's happening, observe what's really, really going on in that moment, and that's what really, really supports them, and meet them where they are. If they're having a bad day and they can't handle anyone else touching their stuff, then maybe it's time to call the play date to a close. Maybe it's time to leave the playground. Maybe it's just time to put them in the carrier and hold them close for 10 minutes while they sort of move through whatever they need to. It's really about meeting them where they are in that moment and seeing what their needs are. And whilst we're talking about ego and us wanting to force them to do something they might not want to, when we're trying to force our children to share or to give up something that they're not yet ready to, it's really useful then when there's a fallout of that, and our child resists us or the other child resists, and we're sort of labeling in our minds, aren't we, what's going on with that child, what's going on with my child, and we've kind of gone. And as I said about the biting incident, Harry became a toy taker and a biter for 3 months at the beginning of last year. And Carla's on here, and I'm sure she won't mind me telling the story. But the worst thing about this whole scenario is that he only really did it to one of my best friend's sons, and only really in his house as well. Kind of, it was occasionally in other scenarios. He was a toy taker, but then he would always go and bite my best friend's son and take his toys, and it was just. It was baffling. We couldn't understand what was going on, and then our minds went in overdrive, and Harry was an aggressor, and why was he always picking on Hani and all of this stuff, and it's like, oh my goodness, it just got really, really emotional. And luckily Carla and I, because we're so close, we were able to talk it through and sort of understand that each child was in their own process, and also in those scenarios, like we talked about sibling dynamics, when children are really close, there's a dynamic that goes on there, and we could see that there was this weird dynamic going on between Harry and Hani, and we couldn't really get our head around it, but they really, really loved each other. But whenever they saw each other, they would just butt heads all the time. And then 3 months passed, and suddenly it passed, and it's fine, and it has never happened since, in more than a year since. So it was, I can really, really relate with how difficult these situations are, and I can really, really relate that we then go off in our own minds, telling ourselves a story about what's happening, what's not happening, who's being an aggressor, who's a victim, who's being picked on, who's being bullied. I've been there, and I can really, really empathise, because it is really hard. But our role in these situations, actually, when we do feel uncomfortable, is to locate where we feel that feeling inside ourselves. Where do we feel uncomfortable? Where do we not feel safe, for example? Whose voice can we hear in our head saying, you've got to share, or don't be such a brat, or all this crazy stuff will start coming up in our minds, and then we can notice what our habitual reaction is now, for what we see as unacceptable behaviour. What's our habitual response? What's our habitual reaction? What's our knee-jerk? What do we want to say? What do we want to do in those moments? And it's just shining the light of awareness is an expression that I love of what's actually happened, and what's actually happening in that moment, and just feeling where that is in that body. And then we just get to know ourselves more, we get to know our reactions more, and we think, okay, there's something going on here. This isn't really about the red spade anymore. This is something about my past. This is something about my conditioning. This is something about my ego wanting my child to be the angelic child in the playground who shares the whole time and has got this amazing personality and never cries and never has a tantrum. And we all do that. And it's just bringing that awareness to what we're doing. We're not being present with our child if we're telling ourselves all these stories. So I hope that's useful. And Carla, I see you've put a response. The talking with reference to last year. It was definitely a process to just understand and respect what they were going through. It really was, wasn't it? And it was so good that it was with yourself that I respect and trust so much as well. And I think that really helped. That it wasn't just someone we met in the playground, and it can seem really difficult if it's someone that you don't know that well. But the fact that we were able to work through it together was really helpful, wasn't it? Shall we move on to older children and how we can start dealing with it once our children get beyond? I'm just thinking when I started doing this with Olivia and Harry, maybe Harry was about 2.5. Maybe from the age of 2, I started suggesting that if there was an issue between him and Olivia, and of course I practiced it on his older sibling first, where if there was a situation between them, I would say, like, you both really want that at the same time, and you can actually say that to any child. You both really want that. How can we find a solution? And obviously when Harry was 2 and Olivia was only just 4, that was a bit more challenging, and I had to coach them and guide them a little bit more. What solution can you think of? And then over time they start to problem solve. And I mean, we touched on this on the siblings Insta Live that I did last week, but it's really giving them the gifts of being able to solve this problem. So now, if there's something that they both want, it's almost like I have to say the magic words of, I wonder how we can solve this problem, or this is a predicament, or Olivia's new expression is, oh, we seem to be in a terrible fix. So she'll say, oh, we seem to be in a terrible fix. And then what she will do, or Harry will do, one of them will run off and get the sand timer. And she'll say, I know what to do. You can play with it for 5 minutes, and then I'll have it for 5 minutes afterwards. So they resolve that problem themselves. And you can do that definitely from when your children are 2, 2.5, maybe 3, depending on their emotional maturity onwards. You can start doing that between the siblings, and then you can expand that to your group of regular play dates, other parents who are following the same parenting style. And this really, really builds their confidence, and they'll be hopefully by then beyond this intense period of needing their toys intensely, but it's fine if they haven't. And it's just getting into a stage where they're resolving things. They're actually doing it without us having to dictate what should be happening in this scenario. And actually that's a really good point about turn taking that I wanted to make, because someone asked a question on my post saying, oh, turn taking is better than making them share. And you're right, it is better, but I do have an issue with turn taking because it is usually adult led still. And what we want to give the gift of conflict resolution to our children. Turn taking is still an abstract concept, just as sharing is to a young child. So taking turns is still the adult saying, okay, you've had it for 2 minutes, now taking it out of their hand and giving it to someone else. That still is not fair. That still is not okay. That still does not validate that child's feelings about wanting to play with that toy. So I'd be really, really careful with turn taking. When they're little, I don't think do it at all. Under the age of 3, don't do it. If after the age of 3, you've got either a sibling or really close friends that you can practice this concept with the sand timers of how can we resolve this problem. And you can use very, very gentle language as saying, maybe you might like to play with it, and then she might like to play with it afterwards. It's guiding them towards that language, not saying you have it for 5 minutes, then you have it for 5 minutes. It's really giving them the gift of learning how to compromise and learning how to solve these conflicts themselves. So as I say, you can do that over the age of 3, and it's got to be part of that journey. It's still not going to be the magical quick fix straight away the first couple of times you do it. It's still going to be probably a 6-month process before they can do it for themselves. Just have another sip of water. And also what you'll find with in part of their practice of getting used to turn taking or sharing or whatever stage they're in, is that there's still going to be situations where they're not going to agree, and there's still going to be weeping and wailing, and they're still going to be coming to you occasionally and going, oh, I wanted it first, and all the rest of it, and that's okay. They're still learning. It isn't a one-size-fits-all approach, and it's not something that's going to be fixed overnight. But I can guarantee that after you've practiced this for a couple of weeks even, you'll be able to see a change, and you'll be able to, maybe 50-50 they'll start, 50% they'll start working out for themselves, and 50% they'll come to you for support. And when they come to you for support, just give it back to them as a gift. What do you think you can do to resolve this problem? You both want to use this at the same time. So that's what I say moving forward as the children get older, and they're starting to get the cognitive ability and emotional maturity to be able to do that as well. I have Just one more point, two more points to make, or one more point to make actually. So I wondered if there's any more questions. Goodness, we've done 40 minutes. If there's any more questions that anyone wanted to ask before I move on to my final point, then do ask away now. What we're doing with this approach to not making our children share, meeting them where they are and not making them do things that they're not yet ready for. We are, and I've said this on every Insta Live actually, we are observing what's going on so we can understand them, and we are honouring our child's journey. And that's all that this is about. We've just got to see, oh goodness, I've got another question. Can we ask outside the sharing topic? This is going to be interesting. So we can observe so as to understand what's really going on. We look at our child and we see what is happening in this moment. What do they really need? What do they really want? What support can I give them? Where can I meet them right now? And then the second stage is honouring their journey. So they, as I said about my experience with Harry, for example, and the taking and the biting, 15 months ago, whenever it was, 18 months ago. Even though it was really hard at times, I just had to trust that was part of his process. I didn't know how long it was going to take. I knew it would probably be between 3 and 6 months, and thankfully it was on the shorter side. But I just had to trust that it was his process and not get annoyed with him when he took any bit. Again, it's just really honouring his journey and knowing that for some reason he had to go through that. It was just before he had his language explosion, so that is also completely normal and completely understandable. Children often will become very intense just before they have a big developmental leap, particularly in terms of communication. So this is completely normal, and we can just try and be with our child in that moment. So honour their journey, honour where they are at the moment, know that it will pass, and all we can do is just be with them and support them in that moment. Sharinka 13, can we ask outside the sharing topic? Tell you what, ask me, because it's pretty late now. We've just done 45 minutes. Would you like to ask the question, and then depending on the content of the question, I can answer it, or perhaps I can put it forward to my Top Tip Tuesday, which is next week. So if you just type what you'd like to know, and then we can decide if we need to delve deep on it. I don't know how much of a delay there is today. So, and actually as Sharinka has asked that, maybe it is a good opportunity, if you have any questions that you'd like me to, subjects you'd like me to deal with moving forward, then just write me the questions now. Carla said, yes, sharing is not caring. Sharing is not caring at all. It's a really horrible expression, and it's my mission in this lifetime to abolish sharing is caring and abolish the naughty step. That is my life's mission, amongst millions of other things I want to abolish or fight for. Sharinka, your question is, my toddler isn't cleaning up her toys. Okay, so let's talk about this on Top Tip Tuesday. We'll talk about this on Top Tip Tuesday, but I'll give you a very quick answer now, which is don't expect her to, because she's too young. If she's a toddler, she's too young. We are going to need to reset the environment, as we say, with our children until the age of maybe 18? Yeah, 18, probably. Let's say that. And I'm really not joking. They need support with resetting the environment. We can prepare an environment to put things back where they belong, but we can do this with no expectation of their behavior. This is a process, okay? And so you got the joke about age 18. I'll do this on Top Tip Tuesday. Thank you so much for the question. And I look forward to seeing you all on Tuesday. Have a fantastic weekend. And thank you so much for all of your questions and the great interaction this evening. I've really, really loved it. And remember, sharing is not caring. And the next time, we can't go to the playground at the moment, but the next time you hear someone say it, you can say, actually, it's not. Definitely is not. I will see you all on Tuesday. Take care. Have a beautiful weekend. Bye-bye. Lots of love.